I'm Shlomi Ron, the CEO of the Visual Storytelling Institute. We are a think tank based here in sunny Miami, Florida. And we are all about bringing the gospel of visual storytelling from the world of art into a more human and purposeful marketing. So before we get started, I have a quick update for everybody. We just transitioned our 6-year visual storytelling newsletter from his previous destination to Substack. So I invite everybody to check it out. It's on visualstorytell.substack.com, and feel free to subscribe. All right, so on to the topic of today. So as you all have been witnessing in the past year with all the action about the metaverse after Mark Zuckerberg's announcements transitioning his brand from Facebook to Meta, there was a lot of brands that started creating their own metaverse experiences. And as I was kind of following this industry, you probably saw it through my blogs and podcasts. It seems very interesting that a new profession that's actually traditional architects actually entered the space and actually brought their amazing knowledge from how to design 3D physical structures and translate that into creating those immersive 3D virtual worlds. So I was kind of intrigued from a visual storytelling perspective about this journey and what architects can, teach us on how to translate visual storytelling experiences into 3D immersive storytelling. So to help me with that, I invited Nicola Rutt. She's the founding director at Multi Studio in London. And what I really liked how they define their company, Multi is our name, refers to an open, collaborative, and pluralistic way of working, which to me, I think it's a great definition for, when you try to build a metaverse experience, you got to be working across disciplines and with vendors with different capabilities. So with that, welcome to the show, Nicola.
Thank you, Shlomi. Thanks very much for inviting me. I've been listening to your podcasts, and I think it's a really interesting area that you're looking at here. So visual storytelling, and to invite me on as an architect. Yeah, I'm
absolutely. No, we definitely, been kind of having some early discussions regarding the metaverse project I was trying to bring about. But before we talk about the fine details, can you share with our audience a little bit about your backstory, how you get started in architecture, and how you kind of found yourself involved in metaverse projects?
Sure. So my background, I'm an architect. I've been an architect for 20 years. I started working, I've always worked in London. I started working 20 years ago for a practice called Hawkins Brown, who were around 20 people when I joined, and are now a top 10 practice, 350 odd people. Mm-hmm. And I became a partner there and headed up the workplace sector. After 20 years, I decided to leave to set up a new architecture practice with other people. We're based in London and Amsterdam, and thanks for the introduction. We're called Studio Multi. And yeah, we work at multiple scales, and we're open to multiple outcomes. And collaboration is really important to us, and just working with different creatives, people from different disciplines, because that serves to create better projects.
Rounded view, yeah.
And so as an architect, I've worked on lots of different types of projects, including workplace, residential, education, but I settled on workplace because I was really interested in the way that people's working patterns were changing, largely due to the advancement of digital technology.
I see.
I'm seeing it across the world, and a lot of changing work patterns have been were already there, but I think COVID and the pandemic has kind of been a catalyst for a lot of workplace trends that were already kind of happening before
right
hit.
Yeah.
So So the reason that I'm here today and talking to you is that visual storytelling is kind of really key to what architects do. We're hardwired to communicate our ideas visually.
So let me stop you right there. You know, this is a question I ask pretty much every guest on my show. You know, exactly that. How do you define a visual storytelling from your perspective as an architect?
I think it's about presenting ideas visually to take your client or your audience on a journey, and it has to be something that they can relate to.
Yep.
I feel like it has to have depth, and it should make them smile. And I think there needs to be an emotional connection somehow.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we tend to, as architects, we do communicate ideas visually through a mix of mediums. So, you know, designing buildings is a very collaborative endeavor.
Right.
Go through lots of different stages. We involve large teams of, we're always part of a large team. You know, it's never just the architect. So it's there's usually a whole realm of different consultants, specialists, you know, planning advisors and sustainability people. But our role is primarily to listen to the challenges that the client faces and their aspirations.
So this is a great segue actually to maybe telling me if you can discuss a little bit about your work at Multi-Studio, what exactly you cover.
So the work we're doing covers different sectors again. We're looking at, we're actually looking at some enlivenment projects. So it's where you've got places that are maybe lacking in something. One of the projects we're doing, actually, our first project, is a small old outdated shopping arcade in a very historic town, Winchester, and we're looking at it's reactivating it. Actually, it's bringing people back to this arcade. It's been you know, there've been shop units that have been empty. There's been some antisocial behavior. It's not been performing very well. Businesses have been suffering. So our role has been to come on board and give it a kind of creative lift. To help attract people back to that area, to help kind of reinvigorate businesses. And when I say we don't do things on our own, this is very much working with the community of businesses that are already there. And every project we do involves working and listening and consulting with, you know, the communities within which we're working. So we're doing that one. That's a kind of public realm project. We're also working on a series of pavilions at a business park which has suffered through COVID and is now finding its feet and rebuilding. It's got loads of great things going for it, and we're designing a series of shared spaces to help bring people out of the offices and bring people together. So I think you could say a common theme of the work we do is about bringing people together.
Wow, that's phenomenal, especially these days, you know, with all the challenges in the workplace and the hybrid, the remote, and the challenges of bringing people back to the office. So I can definitely see, you know, architecture playing a huge role in kind of shaping this new, you know, spaces for them to feel, you know, great about doing their work in their traditional offices.
Exactly, and everything we're doing, you know, sustainability is key to everything we're doing. And there's a system we use called Passive House, which we are trying to apply to everything we do to try and achieve the highest environmental levels. So, but a lot of work we do new buildings, but we're also my particular specialism has been in repurposing existing buildings. So when I talk about this project in Winchester, that's about giving a creative lift to some outdated buildings. We're doing similar projects elsewhere, to old warehouses, you know, kind of outdated offices. So it's giving a new lease of life to projects. Now, where we've started working in the metaverse, that came through the same idea, really. It was, rather than designing something that was, you know, completely new and completely different, we were looking at, well, what if you were in the metaverse and you stumbled across this kind of redundant warehouse, and you ventured into it, and, you know, it looks kind of old and shabby and dilapidated, but you go inside and, you know, it's something really surprising and unexpected that functions completely differently to how you might
So the
imagine.
inspiration came from actual real experience in the real world of your work, reactivating a kind of environment that needs kind of a, you know, a lift up. And
exactly.
I see,
exactly,
that's interesting.
It was a translation of something that I was already very familiar with and that I enjoyed working with. Is that idea of something unexpected, and I think when you're looking at projects in the metaverse as an architect, you know, clearly you don't have all of those constraints that we have in the real world. You don't need to keep, you know, the rain out, and you don't need to worry about things falling down. But that can almost go so far that you end up with something that's not even recognizable,
right?
And, you know, you don't know where the floors finish and the walls start, and maybe that's okay. But for me, and for Studio Multi, we approached our metaverse project as something that was a subversion of a familiar environment.
And I wonder,
industrial shed, and what we loved about it as well was the scale and the ability to play with that.
And did you feel like the visual storytelling approach you apply for physical projects was somewhat different when you worked on the Metaverse project?
Yes and no. I mean, I think in many ways, no, actually. When we're doing an actual in the real world project, we have lots of different sort of areas to think about with the building, because there's the functionality and the performance. You know, what does it do, the scale and massing of the building, its relationship to the street and its surroundings, and also its appearance, materiality and form. And you might you might tell that story in a series of physical models and in drawings,
right?
But the actual, I don't see that necessarily as storytelling. I see that more as kind of informing the client about these sort of different aspects of a building. But the storytelling to me is that emotional connection and what connects the audience to the proposals. And so it's more about how the building is experienced rather than it's made of brick, it's this big, it sits next to you know, these buildings. So and it's not just about the connection to the client and the people who are going to be using it from sort of from the inside out. It's also the experience of the people who walk past it every day, because when you're designing a building, it's there for 50 plus years, and it impacts everybody. So there's a real social responsibility that comes with being an architect.
No, definitely.
I think that the storytelling has to kind of address that. So when we tell a story, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And for us, when we're communicating our ideas about a building design, the beginning would be about setting the scene, the building context, who the surrounding community are, and how it's being used. If it's a reuse of a building, you're often thinking about the history of that building and what's its previous story and how
the associations it actually generates for people.
So that's the beginning. So you're kind of setting the scene, and then the middle would be about how we're addressing the brief. How's it going to look? How's it going to function? And then
I thought this is going to be like the constraints, like the conflict, you know, the kind of the scope of how you need to kind of adapt based on the constraints around.
Exactly, and that's about how you're addressing the brief from the client. But for this bit, for the actual kind of the concept work, that's when we bring together, we have a whole kind of armory of different visual references, and they're often borrowed from literature, from music, from art, fashion, you know.
Oh, wow.
And so we really do, we reach out to a kind of very broad range of cultural references to help explain a design and a concept of a building to a client. So sometimes it's quite unexpected. But that's what we, and I think that's what all architects do. We're kind of magpies, really.
Right.
So we're building up a story from first principles. We're using whatever cultural references we need to help tell that story. And then we also obviously use examples of other buildings and say, you know, it might be a bit like this and a bit like that, but it's more interesting if you've developed a story yourself rather than just saying we're going to design a building for you and it's going to look like this one that's been built in Paris a few years ago.
Yeah, so it's got to be original thinking. Yeah.
And then I guess the next step, the end of that story, is then kind of next steps and just agreeing, you know, how do we develop this now?
I see.
You know?
So maybe this is a good opportunity for you maybe to share a few examples and maybe talk a little bit about your process.
So this is a building I worked on when I was at Hawkins Brown Architects, and this is called Here East. It's at the Olympic Park, which is the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in London. It's a massive 1.2 million square feet, which is quite big for the UK. It's probably not that big for the States, but it's the conversion of the broadcast studios in the media centre on the Olympic Park, and it was completely repurposed as an innovation hub, and it brings together businesses and education and cultural uses, and this was all about collaboration, bringing people together. It had a big umbrella of tech over it, so all the businesses here, everything they have in common really relates to the way that they are progressive in their use of digital technology. And it was about, and also it was about bringing people together kind of in the pursuit of innovation. So it was really great to be working on a project that was about innovation, and we could then apply that kind of innovation to the way that we thought about the architecture. And the reason this slide's here is because I've sort of developed this obsession with big industrial spaces and you know, huge volumes, and the way that they provide space for flexibility and openness and creative thinking. But I came across this lady, Kadeen James, who then approached me. Oh, sorry, she runs a company. She set up a collaborative really called the Immersive Kind, which is a collection of creatives. You know her, Shlomi. I'm probably going to do a podcast at some point, but she works across all sorts of digital platforms and bringing together creatives from around the world, championing young artists, female artists, from, you know,
that's
from
awesome.
So she approached me when we set up Studio Multi. She approached me and said, look, I've been invited to you know, design a gallery and to show NFTs. And at the same time at Studio Multi, we've been designing this space, which is a reuse of an existing industrial shed, and we've been using this as a kind of test bed for ideas. And so
you
she
already had it.
So she approached me at this time, and I made that connection with Kadeen, the fact that we'd met at Here East. We already had that kind of connection of these types of spaces. So we went off and started, I'm just going to flip through these very quickly, but we started thinking about what a virtual gallery could be. So we looked to Sci-Fi and Seth, who is my business partner and also my husband. He's you know, very interested in sci-fi, and he actually pulled together a lot of these slides about how we can look to science fiction. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of this before about that connection.
No, this is
sci-fi and the metaverse, but also about physical galleries and large spaces, you know, and just thinking about, well, we can make this building as big as we want in the metaverse, and it can you know, hold a whole variety of different events. Heroic space, And
So
this idea of
there's a lot of work of metaphors, right? In order to kind of borrow from a different discipline or art form and try to apply it to a 3D structure, right?
a lot of metaphors, a lot, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, we actually use a program called Miro, which is a kind of pinboard where we pin all our ideas up and we work through it.
I see.
And it just kind of grows and grows and grows. It's a great platform for that. But yeah, we collect all these images. So so we started looking at this idea of a linear armature and referencing the street in the Snow Crash metaverse.
Oh, wow.
And this idea of a kind of potentially infinite space that could just grow and grow and grow, and from this space we could develop a series of different galleries, which could be of all different shapes and sizes. They could be suited to different art collections. So we came up with this plan, and we felt the industrial building needed a bit of colour, and we had this idea about a rainbow runway that would run all the way through. And because Kadim's connection is very much with crypto fashion, fashion, which is something we hadn't been connected to at all. So she opened that up for us, and so we developed the rainbow runway. And then you can see we've got this kind of new space coming soon. So this is the linear space that can grow and grow and grow, and then there's an infinite number of galleries that can be built off this space for new collections. And then I'll just quickly run you through. So that's the front. Kadim wanted to have face on the front, so we kind of extruded it out of some stone. Again, all just, and then we love this idea of rewilding and just bringing nature into the building, like it's kind of taking over.
This is like the mixing of a real life photography with the actual 3D modeling, right? So to create a sense of reality.
It is. So, and these so this model, and then these are some of the rooms we built off that main space.
I see.
And then, so what happened then? We developed this design. It then we then put it onto spatial, and then it became a metaverse space. It went from being a 3-dimensional CAD model, which is something that we were used to doing as architects, which we do for pretty much all our projects. We'll design something in CAD, we'll take our clients through it, we'll do a kind of a video that runs through. But with the metaverse has opened up the ability to, put on a headset or even just get on your
desktop
device, and just get straight going yourself. So so this is the Immersive Kind Gallery. These are some views from it. This was an exhibition by Gary James McQueen, and it was to celebrate the Jubilee, actually, and it was about the crown, and he did an AR crown which anybody could wear and then take a photo of themselves. So it's about democratizing the crown.
I actually attended the kickoff, and it was packed. It was hard even to get in. It was amazing. One thing I want to ask you about, if you go back to the previous one, in storytelling, there is a well-known principle. It's called unlikely combinations, and I'm wondering if it had a role in designing this space, because on one hand, you think industrial structure like the one you're showing right now would host like a factory or what you accustomed to see all over, right? But instead, you're actually placing there a fashion show, which is like something that don't belong, but because it doesn't belong, it creates a new experience.
Exactly. Contrasting ideas. So, it goes back to that thing about the element of surprise, where you go through the front door, you turn around and you just see something that you don't expect. And The technology, this isn't when we designed this in the studio, when we used Rhino and we used Twinmotion and different rendering models, it looked much more realistic. And what I think at the moment, when you take these models into the metaverse, because they're seen, because people are experiencing them, walking around them, they have to render very quickly. So you don't get that level of quality that matches the models that we can do.
I see.
Architecturally, it's a different type of process and a different type of software, but I don't think it's going to be too long until the quality of this, and the light, you don't get the light and shadows at the moment, but the quality of this I think will improve greatly.
And I'm curious, when you started working on this project, what were the business goals or the objectives?
The business, I wouldn't say there was really a business goal with this. I think it was research, really. It was trying something new. It was seeing where it would take us.
But were there any stated design goals in terms of target emotions?
I think it was well, I think it targets emotions in the sense that it's really immersive. Once you go in and you're walking around and you're talking to other people in there, and you're looking at digital art that's moving on the walls whilst you're moving, it's really it's a different kind of experience. So I think it kind of targets the emotions in that way. I think also the fact that it is so open and that anybody can come in.
Right.
I mean, there are kind of invited events, but I just think that bringing together of a community with similar interests is really interesting, and I think we could really push the limits of that.
Yeah, and for anyone interested, it's still active on the special platform, right?
Yes,
the Immersive Kind. So everybody listening or watching, you can definitely check it out and walk around and see exactly what Nicola is describing here. Really, as an avatar, and experience this in a 3D immersive mode, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's the other part of it is you're going in, you can dress up however you want with your avatar. I went on to Ready Player Me and got an outfit, but people can, there's a lot of, I mean, these are quite low res images because I didn't want my computer to take ages to render that. So they're a bit fuzzy, but people are coming in with some really exciting outfits that they designed themselves, so it just feels like a real community in there. And it's for the image I had here, so to go back, during Pride 2022, it was a celebration, it was a huge celebration of Pride, and there was actually an event within the Immersive Kind Gallery, which was also projected on the screens, on the big screens at Piccadilly Circus. So you had these kind of groups of people, you had the groups of people from all over the world who were within the Immersive Kind Gallery, watching it on a big screen there with fashion being displayed on the walls, and a DJ. And then simultaneously there was projections in real life with huge crowds of people in London. So I just think that's kind of simultaneous transmission,
multi-channel experience.
Is something that I haven't come across before. And it was, it's the 50 years of Pride, so this was kind of just very felt like a very sort of new experience to me.
So what would you kind of recommend, maybe your top 3 tips for anyone, especially brands that are looking to develop their own metaverse experience, and they need to kind of build together a team, obviously, with architecture perspective in it?
I think it's about just being really authentic about what you, who you are, what your message is, what your values are. Find someone to build your space who will really listen to you and spend time understanding what you want to convey. Ideally someone with the same values. And then don't feel like you've got to design something that's like completely unrecognizable. Don't, just do something that you feel is a version of you that can be subverted and that can be pushed in the metaverse, but kind of strangely familiar, I think is a good way to go.
No, for sure. Yeah, no. And do you see any kind of working on this metaverse project, do you see any kind of misconceptions that people around are voicing that you might want to take the opportunity to kind of clarify?
Well, we're very new to it actually, and we're just working out. There's a lot of criticism, and obviously I've sort of read both sides. I think there's the democratization is really interesting. I think the fact that you can be in the same space looking at something with people from anywhere is really fascinating. I think the sort of quality and the speed at which things render and the sharpness is only going to improve with time. But I can see it as a really useful tool for architects, really, to create a space to be able to go in with end users, with a client, and test things out and just say, look, is this working? How do you find this space? And you can be really experimental very quickly. And that's different to what we're doing at the moment with fly-throughs and so on. But I don't think it's a replacement for the going back to first principles, hand drawing, finding these references, building models. I think that's always got to be this almost the first step to conveying your ideas and getting that kind of emotional connection.
No, this is fantastic. So I really want to thank you for the great opportunity to kind of get a glimpse into the brave new world of architecture now in the metaverse, and I think it's the role of architects is only just going to grow as the metaverse will develop both in computing power and capabilities. So before we go, if someone has any questions and would like to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
They can contact me. Just go onto our website, and there's an email address there, and I'm happy to talk to people about this. Like I said, we're kind of fledglings in this world. We are, we're still doing traditional architecture, but this has been, the idea of designing digital twins in the metaverse and experiencing it. I think it's fascinating, and I'm really keen to carry on exploring.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Nicola. And for all of you listening and watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of Visual Storytelling Today podcast. Have a great
Thanks very much.
Wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.